All right, it's 12:30, so I'm gonna go ahead and get started here. So before I start, I am live on Instagram at the same time and on Zoom, so that way people can catch it live or watch the recording. And so just make sure if you have any questions and stuff to comment them live on Instagram there, and I'll get to them at the end. And same with on Zoom, just leave them in that chat box, and then I will look at that at the end. And then make sure that you are on mute, so that way there are no little distractions. And I'll get started here. So. Going into it, hey everybody, I'm Dr. Kylie Kwong. If you don't know who I am yet already, I am so glad you're here, whether that's live online, watching the recording, you name it. But before we dive in, I want to share why this conversation matters so much to me because this isn't just something I talk about, but something I've lived. There was a time where I didn't feel like myself really at all. I was dealing with so much brain fog, constant fatigue, to the point where no matter how much I slept, it never felt like enough. And my weight was changing, my energy was super low. This is kind of when I was going through schooling, and I was like, okay, there's got to be more to the story. This cannot be normal, and I don't want to deal with this. I don't want to feel like this is how I have to live, right? And but like so many people, I could have easily been told that everything was just fine, and that it wasn't until I did full blood work panel through the Wellness Way actually that everything started to change. So for the first time, I didn't really just get answers, but I actually had a plan. They put together a plan for me. I had starting steps and that accountability partner as well. And honestly, I feel so blessed now, and I can't imagine that feeling like I used to anymore too. So I really thank God for that and completely changing that direction of my health, and my life. And so I'm blessed to actually be able to walk alongside some of the same people on this journey and help them get back to feeling like themselves too, or honestly helping them discover sometimes that whole new version of normal that they may not have even met before. And that's why we're here today. So, because I also want to ask you something. So, if you've ever been told that your thyroid labs are just normal, that's, in the normal range, or it's just stress, or it's just part of getting older, or maybe just take this medication, we'll recheck in a year, deep down, you likely know that's not right. There's something off. And if you're still dealing with the brain fog or the fatigue, no matter how much you sleep, or the weight gain that doesn't make sense, or hair thinning, anxiety, maybe the irregular cycles that get brushed off. I know that was one for me for a while. There's more to the story. And if you haven't found that answer, there are more answers out there. You're not crazy, it's not in your head, and you're not alone. There are many people with this type of stuff going on that we guide through this every day, finding what unique things are going on with them, and then also just starting with that complete picture. And then something we see at the Wellness Way, the truth is the problem isn't that your body isn't trying, it's that we've been taught to look at the thyroid so incredibly limited. And so today I want to open your eyes to a different perspective, the Wellness Way perspective, because here in Sarasota at the Wellness Way, we don't just ask, is your thyroid normal? We want to see, is your body actually functioning the way it's supposed to? And then once you start questioning like that, that changes everything. So let's talk about why so many people are falling through the cracks and what might actually be going on beneath the surface here. So let me get the slides here going. All right. So if you're still being told these things on the screen there that you can see, if you've been told your thyroid's normal, or it's just stress, or you're just getting old, that is not the case. But if you're still dealing with these things like fatigue and weight gain and hair thinning and things I mentioned before, you're not crazy. And this is where we start to see the changes happen. So the biggest issue we see is they've been tested but not fully evaluated. The panels are extremely condensed and we're not getting all the information. So this is an example of that. A lot of times there isn't just a thyroid problem, but a body communication problem. So if we only look at one or two markers, for example, like TSH or T4, those two are not giving you the full picture. So this is an example where we've got a TSH of 5, but then we look at the whole panel versus just that one marker, and we see there's a lot more going on rather than just a high TSH. This tells us the story of why it's happening. So today's focus here, we're going to be identifying, why normal labs don't always mean optimal, because those normal ranges doesn't mean the optimal range. And the key thyroid markers most providers skip, so making sure that you take note and have these markers ran yourself for your thyroid health. We do offer testing at our office as well. So if that is something that you've done before or are looking for help with, that is something we help people all the time with. Another thing is talking about why medication alone does not fix thyroid symptoms and what actually needs to be evaluated to get those answers. So, like I said before, most providers are only testing TSH. Sometimes you get T4, maybe rarely you start getting T3 out there, but that's it. And that is not enough information. So, TSH actually is not a thyroid hormone. So, TSH is a signal from your brain telling your thyroid what to do. It's a feedback loop. It's a hormone that signals your thyroid to be produced, but it's not actually your thyroid hormone. So, if we're only looking at TSH, we're not actually measuring how your thyroid is functioning in your body. There are multiple steps your body actually has to go through to get your thyroid to work properly. So if any of these steps are off, you can have symptoms even if the labs look normal as well. So there's actually four key pieces to thyroid function. So this is a chart here you might see if you're on Zoom. There are four main areas. We've got production, conversion, interference, and immune involvement. So any of those four areas can be affecting the thyroid. And a lot of times if you're only checking T4 or TSH, they're just trying to check production and seeing if they can mark it as hypothyroid, not necessarily looking at why it's happening or how to support it or what other things could be interfering with the thyroid. So we're going to break down each of these as well. So first starting with production. So production, I want you to think, you're producing your thyroid hormone. So that TSH is signaling your body to your thyroid to make T4, make T3, those type of hormones that your body actually utilizes. And so that's where we look at those markers on labs. We want to see free and total T3, free and total T4, TSH. That's going to look a lot at just the production of everything going on. And just remember, you can actually have normal TSH, but actually still have low output of your T3 and T4, the active hormone part. So that is something to also consider, as well as what factors go into proper production of those thyroid hormones. So now that we've got that baseline, what does your thyroid function production look like? Now we can start to evaluate things like iron and iodine and tyrosine and zinc and selenium and vitamins like E, B, C, and D. Those are all important in our body to get through our diet. And, sometimes supplementation can be very beneficial as well, but really evaluating that dietary intake of those nutrients to make sure that your body has the nutrients to make the thyroid hormone to begin with. And then also not forgetting about what things can really slow the proper production of thyroid hormone other than just nutrients. So big things like stress, physical stress, chemical stress, emotional stress, infections, trauma, medication sometimes. Fluoride is another one. There's a lot of things that we'll go into that can start to affect more categories next up here too. So going into conversion. Conversion is the experience where T4 gets converted into T3. T3 becomes that active hormone. So, but what can happen is in signs of stress or things like if you're not eating enough, inflammation, especially inflammation, toxins, infections, maybe sluggishness of the liver or kidneys, those type of things can start to do what's called convert it into reverse T3. So reverse T3 is like the inactive form, the storage form that's not being utilized. And so now when we look at just T3 levels, if reverse T3 is high because it's storing all of it and regular T3 is low, now we've got an issue where it looks like you're not producing enough, but in reality, you're converting it all into the storage form and you're not converting it into the active form. So that's not a production issue. You're not, not producing enough, but there's a conversion problem and something is influencing this conversion into an inactive form. So that's something to really consider, is making sure you have that reverse T3 marker around. The next one being interference. So interference is something else too. So even if your thyroid levels look okay, your body still has to use the hormone properly at the cellular level where that T3, T4 comes into place. And this is where we can sometimes see that interference. So chronic stress is a big one. Nutrient deficiencies, because your body needs the nutrients to be able to utilize that step. Inflammation can start to affect signals. Chemical interference. So I don't know how many people have been aware of the different chemicals out there that can start to interfere with iodine. So iodine helps build and make up our thyroid hormones. And when you have these other chemicals that are similar to iodine, so things like fluorine, fluoride, bromine, those different ones can also bind as well and become very competitive against iodine. So that's another chemical interference right there that we see with thyroid health. And then also estrogen metabolism dysfunction. So if there's a lot of estrogen dominance or things like that, we can start to see binding start to really affect that overall availability of thyroid hormone and receptor sites as well. The next one here being immune system involvement. So this is a really big one that I see in our office, not tested enough. So the immune system is one of the biggest missing pieces. So autoimmune thyroid conditions can be Hashimoto's or Graves'. So a lot of times people consider Hashimoto's like hypothyroid, Graves' like hyperthyroid, but there should be an autoimmune presence to be actually diagnosed with that, such as an antibody response. So there's thyroglobulin antibodies and thyroid peroxidase antibodies, and both of those should be tested, not just one, both of them. Sometimes we'll see one person, like for example on this slide, they didn't really have any detected of the peroxidase, but they had an astronomical high amount of the globulins. So that can change from person to person. I actually, when I tested my thyroid health, my production was fine, my conversion was a little struggling, but the immune system piece, I actually had the thyroid peroxidase antibodies, didn't have the thyroglobulin antibodies. So mine was opposite. So you make sure you want to make sure you have both tested so you have that complete answer. And honestly, most people are not tested for these, and medications are not addressing the autoimmune component. They're not addressing the antibodies. They're addressing production. So if someone says you have Hashimoto's, just go on this medication for production, that's when we start to question, okay, what's going on? How can we help? So going into the next slide here, with this, you can have normal TSH and be told everything is fine, just like I was saying, and then have an antibody response with your thyroid tissue. So that is an active autoimmune process attacking that thyroid tissue. So that is something we don't want to see happening. A lot of times that isn't just a thyroid issue, that's an immune system issue. So we actually need to dive deeper in figuring out why the immune system is triggered and why is it attacking the thyroid. So this is why many people don't get answers. It's because testing is incomplete. And if you don't have the full test or the full picture, you can't create a plan that actually works. So medication can absolutely be necessary, at certain times. But the problem is if you do not address why the thyroid is struggling, or if you do not address why conversion isn't happening correctly, or why the immune system might be involved, you're not giving yourself a real answer. So our goal is not to replace medication. Our goal is to understand why is your body in this pattern in the first place and how can we support you naturally. So this is a principle that the Wellness Way explains to all of our patients because we believe the body is connected. So if you look at this gear here, imagine it's like a watch or a Swiss watch, and all of these gears are working together and they're turning together. And as soon as one of them starts to slow down, you can see how that starts to jump around and maybe can start to affect the one across from it or beside it. All of your systems are working together with that master coordinator in the middle, that nervous system. It's like the electricity to everything going on. And so our body needs to work in synchronous together and have that full communication. And if there's something going on with the thyroid, we need to look at, okay, what else is there going on? Is there something going on in the immune system? Is there something going on with the hormones or the digestive system? So that's where we look at the whole body. So going into what we do here. So at the Wellness Way, when someone comes into our clinic, we don't just look at thyroid markers, but if someone has not gotten their full thyroid tests run, that's when we're going to start. We're going to make sure we get the full picture of what's going on right away so we know what issues is it going on. Is it production, conversion, interference, or immune system involvement, or what else is going on? So we also evaluate things like hormones and metabolism. So how your body is handling your estrogens, your progesterone, your testosterone, your cortisol, all of this can really play a huge role in thyroid health, especially like our adrenal glands. If your adrenal glands are not producing enough hormone, that can start to affect the thyroid as well. So that's somewhere we also look into if we're trying to figure out why this is going on. Another one being looking at gut health and digestion. Are you absorbing all your nutrients? Because like I mentioned before, nutrition is so important when it comes to production and conversion and utilization of thyroid hormone. And so if we're not absorbing our nutrition and we're deficient, we need to figure out why. So that's where we're looking at like a comprehensive stool test or looking at, just top down like digestive system habits, dietary habits. That's where we can really consult and talk through plans and options that way. Another thing we look at is cortisol regulation. So we do Dutch testing in our office that looks at hormones, but it also looks at the pattern of your cortisol throughout the day. So your cortisol, if it is dysregulated, if it is spiking at times it shouldn't be, that is a stress on the body, which can start to increase that thyroid conversion into that reverse T3, that inactive form. So that's a conversion issue. So we want to make sure that that cortisol is not the issue there. Another one being nutrient levels. So we run comprehensive nutrient panels. So we have a NutriEval panel that we do that looks at methylation, all the different B vitamins and nutrients, antioxidants, you name it. We're looking at the body as a whole that way. Mycotoxins, biotoxins, we look at if someone has maybe had a lot of mold exposure in the past, seeing how their body's detoxing, what is it that they're detoxing, because that can really start to trigger the immune system, which can trigger some of those antibodies to begin with. So that's where we address that. Food allergies and nutrition is another one. So kind of like I was talking about before with nutrients being so important, but also inflammation. So food allergies are unique to every person. There's different kinds of food allergies out there from IgE to IgG, different ones out there. But essentially, if you have an allergy response, that is causing inflammation. And that inflammation right there is one of those things that we want to bring down in the body if we have an autoimmune issue going on. Stress patterns, so talking about like cortisol again, but looking at your nervous system. So that's when we might even just look at getting you adjusted, supporting that master coordinator, right? That nervous system, supporting that stress pattern overall in your daily life. Because if stress is a really big component of thyroid dysfunction, we need to identify where that stress is coming from, what kind of stress is it, and how can we find a picture or find an answer to solve that. And so all of these things that we're evaluating, it's different from person to person. We're looking at this test for one, this test for another. That's where that new patient appointment is so important, and working with the provider so we can tell you, okay, this is the kind of test we need to start with because this is what I'm hearing and this is what I think is going on. And then we can confirm that because we don't just guess with what's going on, we test. That's one of our things. And so we want to see exactly on the test, why is that going on? So some common examples we see: chronic stress affecting conversion of thyroid, gut dysfunction is a big one, can impact absorption of nutrients and trigger the immune response and autoimmune. Food allergies, so that can really trigger that inflammation and immune response going on as well. Nutrition deficiencies, which can impair the hormone production itself, the thyroid production, conversion, metabolism, and usage. So this is why people are staying stuck, because they're trying to fix the system-wide issue with one simple solution, one medication, when in reality, there can be a lot of different things going on. So then the real question becomes, what does a thyroid evaluation actually look like? So now that I talked through things that we do, this is what I want you to see for an actual thyroid test. So at our clinic, our thyroid panel is going to look at TSH, right? Total and free T4, total and free T3, reverse T3, so we can make sure there's no conversion issues going on. Thyroid peroxidase antibodies, thyroglobulin antibodies, T uptake, thyroxine binding globulin. So right there is going to be our total thyroid panel. But another thing is we want to see how other things are affecting it. So that's when we might add in an anemia panel to see if there's an iron issue, estrogens to see if there's an estrogen receptor issue or metabolism thing going on, blood sugar regulation to see if that's a big stress on the thyroid, liver enzymes to see how the liver detox is doing, vitamin D, B12, folate, those nutrients come on some of our anemia panel that way. But that right there also is super important in the usage of thyroid hormone. And then again, everything's tailored to that patient. So we can add in markers, remove, depending on what's going on when we look at blood work. And then we can also pair that with maybe food allergy testing or other testing going on to figure out why and how we can start to bring down that inflammation if that's the case. So if you are a Wellness Way patient currently, I definitely encourage you to talk to your provider about getting your full thyroid panel checked often. But when you go through this process with us, if you're not already a patient, this will give you clarity on, what your body is actually doing. A personalized plan based on your labs, specific action steps, not just guessing and take this supplement, right? We're going to figure out what's actually going on and what your body is doing internally. So especially important if you've been told your labs are off or normal and you feel off and your thyroid medication is not working anymore, you still feel symptoms, or you suspect Hashimoto's but haven't actually been tested. That's a reason. If you're struggling with fatigue, weight changes, hormone issues, all of these things are important to consider proper testing. So you don't need to keep guessing. You don't need to keep being dismissed, but there is a way to understand what's actually going on. So if you've been told your labs are normal, you're still dealing with these symptoms, and you've tried everything and still don't have answers, you don't need that surface level solution anymore. And so that's why we need to understand what's driving that thyroid dysfunction. Instead of just chasing symptoms, helping your body restore what's actually going on right now. So we do actually have a special going on to get this going. Here we go. So if you're not currently a patient, we have this webinar exclusive. So the next 48 hours, you can go on our website or you can scan those QR codes, and that will get you directly to the booking page for that comprehensive new patient exam. And you can do it virtually too. So if you're watching this and you're thinking of your daughter right now, or your sister or a friend, send this to them right now too. Take a picture of it, send it over to them, or let us know, send us a message, and we will send them this recording as well. So this does end in the next 48 hours, but what this does is this special actually gives you a $100 credit towards lab testing additionally. So our normal price is going to be $99 for that new patient exam, but you will receive $100 credit towards lab testing. So it's almost like a win-win right there. So if you guys have any questions, or you just need to get your feet wet too, we do offer the comprehensive, our comp call, the 10-minute comp call with a provider, where we can, help address some of those issues maybe going on. And if our approach is right for you, and we can get you set in the right direction that way too. So if hopefully something you heard today resonated with you, I encourage you to take that next step, whether that's, sending this information along to someone that needs to hear it, or, giving your doctor some information that you want ran, or getting the right testing, right? So have that conversation with us and just start asking better questions about your health, because you deserve to feel good, right? And you know your body, when something's up. So I'd love to hear it. If you guys have any questions I can help answer, make sure to write them in the chat for me here, and I can address those over the next few minutes for you guys. But thank you all for joining both Instagram, Zoom. I appreciate you guys. So let's see what questions you guys have. All right. So, I do see one in here. I heard that iodine supplements can harm thyroid function. So it depends on what's going on. So I would definitely encourage you to get your iodine actually tested. It's a piece that we can add to blood work. Or our NutriEval test also tests iodine. And there's some other ways we can identify what's going on if it's an actual production issue. But there's a lot of times that people are deficient in iodine depending on their diet. But that's where working with a provider to know if it's something that they want you on, because just kind of willy-nilly taking some supplements sometimes isn't always the answer. Because yes, if someone has too much iodine and now they're taking it, that might not be a good thing as well. So that's why it's like working with a provider, making sure that those recommendations are specific to you is important. Okay. And then another question, I was going to ask if the list of tests is available so I can make them get them all done. Yes. So message our team, send us an email, give us a call. We can send over the information for our thyroid panel. We do a couple different panel options in the office depending on what's going on. That's where the provider can say like, okay, this is the panel I want run. And you can take it to your provider that way and get them done. But we have a couple different ones. We have our just TTP panel, but there's also where I want to see more going on, right? So we have a TWW thyroid panel that includes a few hormones, all the thyroid stuff, like CBC, blood sugar. It's like a good chunk of everything. And then if you're a cycling woman, there's a hormone panel called the TWW Thyroid with Hormones. That one's probably our most comprehensive one. That's the one that I actually did when I first started care. Gave me more than enough information, honestly, and it was the most comprehensive one. So, but yeah, let me know if you have questions and we can get you a list of the right tests. All right. Well, thank you for joining. I appreciate you guys, and have a good rest of your day and weekend ahead.